Good morning, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. We're kind of chilly up here.
You're in North Georgia, right?
Yeah, Georgia. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting some cold temperatures, but it's beautiful. How are things down in Florida?
You know, one of my Philadelphia friends just came down to visit us and he brought his weather with us. It's cold and gray.
Is it? Oh
Yeah,
boy.
I'm fixing to kick him out.
Yeah, get out of there.
Go,
Go back to the
go
to the
go back
cold.
to Philly with your weather.
That's right. That's right. Oh wow. Well, I guess you get to experience a little bit of winter.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it is. It's gray, but I'm not shoveling anything off the ground and I haven't, fallen on the ice or snow, so that's nice.
Yeah,
That's a good
that's
thing.
good. That's an advantage for sure. So what
Yeah.
would you like to talk about today? What are we going to share with the folks out there?
I um I was wondering if you would want to just talk about anger.
Oh, I'd love to. Yes. I would
That
love
wouldn't piss you off too much?
No, not at all. I think it's part of being human, but I think it's we struggle with it because we equate it in some weird ways, but I imagine you've got some insights about that and I want to hear all about it.
Well, I want to hear yours too. I do have some insights, or thoughts at least. I don't want to put them in the category of insights. I'll let everybody decide that for
Yes.
themselves.
Yes. That's good.
So, when was the last time you really felt anger? And I just want you to like sort of pull that back in. You don't have to,
Wow.
talk about it.
Well, earlier in this week, I felt some anger, I'll have to say. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, you
And I'm
know,
inviting anybody who's listening to the podcast to, by the way, to sort of recall that feeling. So
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. So I had some anger earlier this week. I felt judged and misunderstood. Um,
Mm,
and that was the story. And so
yeah.
I created it, right? And I'm getting I used to look at anger, and I'm getting much better about this as something to feel shame over. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really beautiful.
Yeah. But this week I was able to kind of sit with it and just let it run its course and feel it and maybe not be so harsh with myself. But that's always a tendency in me that pops up. It's like you shouldn't be feeling this way.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
what does it say about you that you're feeling this right now? Right?
That was one of the things I really loved about, when I found my way out to the Temple of the Universe 30 years ago and started listening to Michael A. Singer, who we've talked about before, author of The Untethered Soul. He talked a lot about anger and it's a natural thing that when you try to do things in life or even just try to have a relationship or train animals, have kids, build something, you're going to get mad. You're going to get pissed off at different points. And it's probably well deserved at least once or twice, a week
Yeah,
that somebody crosses you or does whatever.
right.
So this is one thing I heard at the temple that helped me a lot was the anger of a saint is like writing on water. And it's the suggestion that anger can be a fleeting thing that doesn't leave a lasting mark, just
Mhm.
as writing on water immediately disappears.
Mm,
And I love that because it normalizes anger, but it also normalizes not having to carry it, like not having it turn into some scar or a thing that has to be carried around for a long time.
yeah. Do you feel that if we repress our anger that it's kind of perpetual, like it sticks with us, and I feel
Well,
that.
okay, I'll talk about my anger. So,
Good.
so I know this is going to be sound crazy, but occasionally when I'm in the temple, like so I have jobs in the temple, like during the talks and stuff. And occasionally I'll get frustrated because I feel like, it's very late at night, and it's time to go home and people are still asking questions and I'll get real frustrated. And I'll feel my anger come up. And like in a logical time, in a time of coolness, I would look at that. And most of the time, I'm going to say that, like, of the 30 years I've been doing this, 95% of the time, I'm great with it. Like, I love the fact that people come and that they are served and that they're having an amazing experience. People come from all over the world.
Sure.
But on this one particular time, like, I was just like grumpy as shit. Like, I was like so angry and like just frustrated. And so I think the point of that is that there was very little happening to make me angry in that moment, but there was some stored anger, frustration that I've been carrying for a while. And I think that's how I would choose to answer that question, is that I know that over the course of my life, trauma, mistreatment, my own stupidity, I have stored anger, right? And it doesn't come out all the time, but when it does, it can be damaging. It can be difficult to have meaningful communication with people, and it just leaves a mark in my face that just repels people. And it's harsh.
It is. Yeah, I can really relate to that because when I looked at the situation, it was really a small thing, but the reaction that I was feeling on the inside wasn't actually based on that thing. It was based on similar things that had occurred in the past, times I had felt
Mm,
similarly, and it was kind of like my mind went into this whole story of, well, there it goes again. You're just being misjudged. Nobody understands. And I'm just it's building up in this kind of, anger that did not match the situation um in the present.
mm.
And that let me know, yeah, that's a hurt, that's a tender spot that's been there for a really long time.
So that, I think, like what you just touched on, for me at least, is like the first tool of managing anger, which is mindfulness, right? So, I'm sure there's a pretty high percentage of people who listen to this podcast who do meditate, have meditated, or at least see the value of mindfulness and meditation and
Right.
breath. I'll throw that in with that sort of little cluster of cool stuff.
Yes.
And like that moment when you can realize that this is just a thing that's coming up, and that it's not, like, it takes a lot of the juice out of that moment, because like if somebody's attacking you and you're angry, then fucking A, it's time to get angry, and it's time to fight, and it's time to like throw yourself at that situation, right?
Yeah.
But the mindfulness to realize that you are opening something inside that's been sitting in there, that's stored anger, like you said, like that now becomes a moment of healing, right?
Right.
So so that's my viewpoint, right, on that stored anger, is when those things come up, and when I'm viewed that moment of my own anger, I went to the second tool. It's just breathing. So do you feel that natural response come in?
Yes. Yes. If I can catch it early enough before it becomes a reaction, and I can just kind of sit with it and take some deep breaths,
Mm.
it will subside. And sometimes it'll take a day or two, honestly, to get a little bit more clarity about it. And
Yeah, yeah, I,
it,
I really love that, because there's like almost two sort of ways, two kind of processes for dealing with anger. And one is in the moment, right? Because like, so one thing that when I do work with people, I actually try to get them to never go backwards, right? Because of anger. And that going backwards would be like messing up a relationship or a business deal or some meaningful communication that's happening. And so in the moment when you breathe, right? And like this is a thing that helped me so much as I was trying to develop myself as a young person trying to make a way in corporate America or with a job or any business thing, is I I I learned how to breathe, like almost like sneak some calming breaths in, even in the middle of a confrontation, right? So if I'm standing in front of my boss, I used to be a photographer, a news photographer back in the 90s, and was running a team of newspaper photographers. And there was a lot of a conflict around, do we send a photographer to this dumb car crash? Do we know what are we doing with our people? And it pushed my buttons like on the regular. My buttons would be pushed, and I would be standing in front of an authority figure, which I admittedly still have problems with, right?
Right.
And I learned anyway. I think the point of that is I learned like when I was getting triggered, like, and that's what I heard you say too. It's just how to take that moment and just like right now, if I talk to somebody, I have to shut my eyes and kind of like remove all the inputs. But I learned at that moment though that I could actually just take a deep breath in through my nose and create a little space, right?
Yeah. 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 It doesn't mean it's going to dissipate entirely, but it definitely kind of takes the charge away or lowers the charge. And then I think there's less of a chance, it's not guaranteed, that you're going to be, reactive towards in the rest of your day. Like you might still be ruminating about it. I mean, that rumination might continue. And it does take me a few days to like, oh, okay, you know, like
Mm,
silly April, like you see that this was just it wasn't even related, like the way you felt. It was actually this thing that had occurred earlier in life or at multiple times in your life, and that's just something that's sore that it kind of got touched, right?
absolutely. Like, and for me, it was, depending upon how you work with your chakras, but that, you know, first, second, third chakra, there's a lot stored up in there, especially the third one, about people listening to you. And so in that moment, when somebody does push that button and you do breathe, that quote by Viktor Frankl, I actually happen to have it queued up here. He was a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. Between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Yeah,
And that's a quote I think we've even mentioned before, but it's just so powerful, right? In
yes.
that breath, when it's like you can choose to not go backwards, and like even if, and sometimes you don't have even an hour to process it. You've got to make decisions like immediately, like where
Yeah.
people are going, what they're going to do, how are you going to handle the next 5 minutes of your life?
Yeah.
And just that breath will help. There's some huge percentage of help that it would provide, like 50% better,
Oh,
that we will do just on clearing our mind. Because like you said, if we dump years worth of anger in because of one button pushing, and maybe there's didn't get a sleep the night before, whatever. Anyway, yes, so you don't want to end up dumping all that anger, that one cue on somebody.
yes. I remember years ago when I worked in the hospital, I just did not have that kind of, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's control. I think it's quite the opposite. I didn't have that kind of allowing. And I remember being like immediately reactive, immediately going down to radiology and having words with the radiologist, and then
Yeah.
everybody like kind of like, oh my gosh, what's going on, and just so regretting that afterwards, so many regrets about being so, quick to draw, and it wasn't even,
Mm,
whatever they did or didn't do, it was just so amplified by my own
mm.
deep unhealed issues at the time. And it's a real blessing to be able to take that pause. It really is. And I'm not perfect at it.
So
But
how do you notice now? Like what cues you in that it's time to be mindful, it's time to take a breath? Like what are your cues?
I can feel it's almost like there's this rising of energy coming through me,
Mm,
and it's creating kind of a constriction or a tightness, and I can feel it in my neck and in my jaw. And I mean, physically, and sometimes I'll actually get a headache. Like I'll get a headache from it.
wow.
And so I can when I feel that happening, I know something has happened. I've been triggered, something has tapped into a wound, and if I can just pause in that moment and slow down and breathe like you were saying, then I can get through it. Now, I may not be able to articulate it or have any kind of real understanding about it. I'm a little slow. It'll take me a few days sometimes to kind of work that all out, but it's the beginning of the process. So,
I like at the beginning you talked about how Like there's a stigma around expressing anger, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's sadly, societally, it's even more so for women perhaps than men, which
Yes,
is
most
a
definitely.
shame, right?
Yeah.
But when you feel like your jaw constricting, your chest constrict, those are that's a fear mechanism for preventing you from expressing, right?
Yes, I was trying to contain it because I will look like, you know, a bee with an itch. If
Yeah,
I'm gonna look
yeah.
that way because that's how society sees women that, are
Are
reactive.
honest and forthright.
Honest and forthright. Yes, yes. Yes, exactly. So there is that whole conditioning around that I'm battling on the inside that I'm feeling as well. Like, you better put a cap on this because,
Right.
it's gonna be bad. So
One of the things that I really love about you know, the yogic way of working with anger and the chakra system is that, you know, the breathing opens all that up, right? Like the jaw and this chest. And the value of that is that it is long-term stuff that we've held, you know, some scars, traumas, blocks. And in that relax and release mode, like there's an opening that can happen. And if you have just enough consciousness
Mhm.
to not speak just for a couple of breaths, you can release a lot of it. And it's an offload. It's more than just, it's not suppressing and it's not constricting. It's opening and offloading.
Mhm.
And it has kind of the same spiritual power as forgiveness, right?
Yes.
Because you're letting go of deeply held stuff that and making it much less likely to direct anger inappropriately in the future, right? Which
Right.
is what we're talking about. Like the stored anger becomes directed inappropriately because we don't know. It just comes up and we're just blasting it out at whoever happens to be in front
Right. That's right. God forbid you're in the room.
of. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it can be intense but that involves a great deal of self-compassion, being like, "Okay, it's okay that I'm." And I think that was a big hurdle for me was, "It is okay that you're feeling this. You're
Yeah.
not a bad person for having these emotions." That was
Yeah.
huge for me to overcome because I had a lot of conditioning growing up, in the '70s and '80s, and then also coming from religion and the idea that I was supposed to have this like tremendous self-control all the time. And to give myself permission to feel that thing, even if it doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense at the time, I can't really make sense of it, but I'm feeling this thing, just allowing that.
Yeah. There's also an element too that at the same time that you're having a, I say you, we, us, me,
Right.
we as humans are having an illogical response
Hmm.
because something is stirring up old stuff inside, you know, this being released. There's also an element that I find helpful of trusting my anger. Like there's something happening that's probably not right.
Yes.
And it may be requiring only 20% of the response I'd like to give, but something. And so being able to sit with that and just give myself trust that there's something I'm going to work on, but this may not be the right moment or the time or the quality or the nature or amount of anger to be released isn't appropriate for that thing, but it still will be addressed at some point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's been some sort of violation that we're perceiving, and it does deserve attention. Like, it's to me, it's like it needs to be heard, it needs to be listened to, and the sooner the
Yeah.
better, because that's the other part is the stuffing. It creates this avalanche, this volcano.
Yeah.
And I've found if I can deal, and I don't necessarily mean that you have to go to somebody, if you don't feel like they're going to be receptive of what you're saying, but just to deal with it with yourself, maybe journal, write it out, talk to a friend about it, get it out, somehow, some way. And then you feel like you've had your own back, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. You're taking care of yourself, right?
Mm.
You know, as yogis and a living, well-functioning, normal human being, like every day we start with some level of suppressed stuff. subconscious, some scaras, whatever that we hold on to.
Right.
Uh, A way to look at life as our mission is that every day there should be less of that. Every day, every breath should be carrying some of that away.
Yeah.
And what you just talked about was like never going backwards in that effort too, that never storing more stuff, making every day a chance to let go. This those blockages that accumulate inside us like that, they keep us from really loving fully, right? They
Mhm.
keep us so tuned into our own needs because we're so afraid of them getting triggered, and the responses, they're so ugly that we can over focus on our own needs out of relationships and out of interactions.
Yeah.
Driving in traffic, we take it personally if somebody just pulls in front of us. It's really powerful to start every day with the intention of letting go of more of the blockages, of the constrictions of that, and keeping that breath moving. I swear, like it just moving breath inside us, just keeping it not held and flowing, just allows that to happen, that relaxation of the heart space.
Yes. It's breath, taking oxygen in the body. My background is in neuromuscular therapy, and I know that tissue that is tight is not oxygenated.
Mm,
It's not
yeah,
getting oxygen. And so when I feel that rise up in me, I can feel my body, not taking that in. But it is the breath, like you said, that relaxes the body and allows that to come back into the muscles. And, I think we can prevent so much of our suffering just by breathing, just by pausing, just by being willing to allow something to move through, you know.
absolutely. That's a really deep Buddhist principle, right? Because a lot of times when we do that work, it hurts. Like you said, suffering, right?
Mhm.
There's going to be pain when it comes up. I mean, I think that's a pretty solid truth that if you have stored something from a painful interaction, the moment when it comes up, we'll relive some of that pain. And that's that stored anger that we're experiencing. But in the release of it and the breathing and the relaxing around it, it's a one-time pain, or you're releasing most of it. You don't have to sit and suffer with it. It doesn't have to become a health issue or a stress issue or a long-term negativity issue. Storing all that stuff really makes life look gray and just lifeless and uninspiring, carrying all that anger.
Yes, definitely. And I think just to turn the tables a little bit, how do we react to other people's anger?
I was thinking the same thing. And
Yeah.
and I have a quote. So her name, we call her Ma Yogeshakti, but she was the one who came to the temple and essentially was one of the first saints to really, Indian saints. So you can, take that with whatever you want. But she had a beautiful piece of wisdom that she shared with Mickey that I really love. She came to him once, and Mickey tells a story a lot, like, and said to him, "Don't you love it when they get angry at you?" And she paused for a second and she goes, "There's so much energy." And
Uh,
like, see, that's understanding that when somebody blows up at you, it has nothing, almost nothing to do with you.
yes.
And if when we can hold that clarity, it does a few things. Like number one, it keeps us from storing that in our own hearts and our own beings and feeling like we're going to be, it helps us to relieve a potential trauma inducing event,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yes.
it has like there's no reason for us to store that energy. And then secondly, and really powerfully, we can help relieve someone else of their suffering. Like if you can hold on to the energy of helping someone let go of their pain and just take it,
Hmm.
turn the other cheek. That's what it means in the Bible when it says turn the other. That's one of the meanings, is to turn the other cheek and just let that come out. Give them the space, especially if it's a loved one, because those are even harder to deal with because there's so much pent up, whatever with our loved ones, parents, lovers, friends.
Yeah.
But
I find that to be so true. Like I, as a recovering codependent, I used to really make it my mission to make sure that those around me weren't angry because I equated that as bad because it was bad for me. I was told it was bad, so it has to be bad for other people. And I had this beautiful client a while back. I do a kind of work it's shadow work. It's using a system called the Gene Keys. And we were discussing this, and she says, "Yeah." She goes, in regards to her partner, she goes, um, "I'm just not going to kink the hose anymore."
Mm,
I'm not going to do that. I'm going to allow them to have these emotions. I'm not going to try to contain them. I'm just going to hold space for them, and I'm not going to kink the hose.
mm.
That was, I learn so much from my clients, I really do.
Go.
And when she said that, I thought, oh my goodness, I think I've spent a lot of my life trying to kink the hose on other people's anger because of the ideas that I had, the conditioning around what anger meant. And it was a gift. I mean, that was just such a gift to me to
Mm,
actually have a visual of, that water's got to come out. Like even after you turn a hose off, like a faucet off, there's still water in there.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have to allow it to come out. It's not great to kink that hose or to bend it, because then that water just kind of sits in there and gets all stagnant, and it's not a good thing. So not only kink our own hose, but maybe not do that to others close to us. Let them have what they're feeling.
I I think over COVID, I was very conscious of this for a variety of reasons, but I really started to tap into my sensitivity, right? And it's a superpower, for to be a really sensitive person,
Mhm.
but it also can be it comes with drawbacks
Yeah.
because in our awareness of the minute nature of people's expressions and the tone of their voice it's easy to get into our own heads about how we interpret that about ourselves. And I think at the core of this is not taking things personally,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And it could be argued that no matter what, we're going to take things personally if people say things to us. But on another really clear way of thinking about things is people are just doing what they need to do. And especially people who we don't know that well, and
Mhm.
even the ones who are close to us, they're going through these things that we just talked about, releasing stored energy. We
Yeah.
don't have to take that in. And we don't
Right.
have to reject it, but it's like standing, in a wind and you just stand there and you feel the wind rush by and you don't try to hold it, you don't try to control it.
Right.
And in my sensitivity, I would get lost in it and
Yes.
I would pull back and it would make me withdraw from situations. And I started to see how it became a limitation, like that power. It's like anything that provides some sense of power and ability can be a detriment in excess.
Yes.
And to start to let go of that and feel that consciously. But again, all these things are contingent upon mindfulness, right? Just being aware of what's happening and what we're doing. And that takes practice. I think that's the part where you talk about it's hard. It's the practice of getting there that you can handle more and more mindfulness. You get more and more capacity for mindfulness in more and more difficult situations, right?
Yes. 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 It's just being comfortable with emotion as an energy that just exists in this universe, and allowing
Yeah.
it to be what it is, instead of trying to control it either in yourself or others. Just letting people, and allowing them to feel safe to do that. Like, it's okay. I may not really feel like this situation warrants you being angry right now, but that's really not for me to judge, because I'm not the person going through it. And if that's
Mm,
how you feel, I'm going to just sit here and let you, I'm going, not let you, because it's not even my role to let you. Like, I'm just
right.
gonna be with you while you're here. And if it gets overwhelming for me, because I'm a very sensitive person, and I
Yeah.
don't feel like I can handle the discomfort of what you're doing, I might have to excuse myself, but it's not personal. That's about me. That's about me and my um, difficulty with being able to handle this intensity. And it's so funny, because on one hand, I can really I can become very angry, but then I have a hard time handling the anger of others, and it's not mine to handle. It's
Mm,
not about me.
mm. How many times have you like talked to somebody who's really blowing up and they just seem like they're being a complete asshole and you find out like the whole story of what they're going through in that moment, whether they're having money problems or the health of a parent or a spouse or and you start to backtrack and you think, oh my God, there's like, it's a wonder that they're even able to function at all as they stand in front of me right now.
Yes.
And if you had known that at the beginning of the conversation, it would have changed your complete perspective. That's powerful to see how like a couple little pieces of information will change your whole way of dealing with someone.
Mm.
And that's a cure for judgment in a way. Like that's a really that bit of mindfulness, knowing that people are going through a lot. Everybody's got a story,
Yes.
helps take some of that judgment away and helps us be more loving, more open, and more able to help people process their own pain, their pain.
Yeah.
And my God, the rewards, like when you help somebody process pain like that, I swear it lifts it out of your own being, that sense of being a facilitator to help relieve suffering in the world, relieves your own suffering in a huge way.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think that is so true. It is such an honor and such a blessing to just serve as a witness, and um to see someone process it and get to the other end. I know that that has
Mm.
been a tremendous gift uh, for me, for the individuals in my life that have allowed me to do that, that I could feel safe just being angry or imperfect and just feeling all that and with no judgment, no comparison, no um, you know, no comparison of pain,
Mm.
I'm just here with you as you go through this. A tremendous gift, both to the person, the midwife, the facilitator, and the receiver.
Yeah, yeah. Help deliver the pain.
Yeah,
Let it let it go off on its own.
yeah.
Mm.
Gosh, this is such a powerful subject. It
Yeah.
is. It really is. I feel like in the
So
future we're going to be much more accepting of our emotions, and I feel like we're moving in that direction, and that's very exciting.
so the basic tools are mindfulness and being aware of breathing and opening the space for release. And in the moment, choosing your words and your response carefully in light of what you are going through in that moment, you yourself, and what the other person is going through.
Hmm. Hmm.
And as you said a few minutes ago, sometimes you just need to walk away, and that's fine. You know, there's a lot of good reasons to go to the bathroom in the world, and that might be one of them. Hey, I'll be right back. I need a break and wash. I've also heard really good things about just washing your face, like splashing water on your face in those moments, that it triggers some physiological responses that help sort of create a little bit of freshness, release, openness, allow us to change our state a little more readily.
Oh,
And those are some good short-term responses. And in the long term, you talked about journaling or walking and thinking and breathing and meditating and talking to a friend. It's almost like a two-stage process when there is anger like that. We realize it in the moment. We try not to let it take us backwards or to create more suffering, more pain.
mhm.
And in the long term, to just deal with it effectively so we don't have to live with it, that we can release it. We can build strong habits of mindfulness and health. And as we release that, there's no reason to walk around carrying anger. It really distorts our worldview. It makes the world an ugly place when we carry anger for a long time.
Yes, and as you're describing, I'm thinking this the physical implications of having that in your body all the time, or not being able to release that, not being able to process that. Yeah, that's like I said, I actually remember getting like pretty bad headaches from, trying to repress that. So yeah, I love that. And the breath, that's tremendous. That's
Yeah.
tremendous.
You
This is
know, I've seen this thing over time, bumper stickers that say, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention.
mm,
And I I want to push back on that a little bit because it's one thing to notice what's going on in the world. It's to see the suffering of other people and the mistreatment. I work in prisons, and there's so many people who could just so constructively not be incarcerated, and treatment of people in those spaces. It needs to be worked against. But a productive way to work against these things is by handling the power of what's happening And it's not about being angry. It's about seeing fully with clarity what's taking place in life, what's happening in front of you, not absorbing it, but keeping your sense of personality, of who you are, the brightest aspect of who you are, and then carrying that forward productively to help in any way you can, whatever way the universe puts in front of you to be helpful. So
You'll
it
get
is easy.
lost in it.
Yes. Yeah. Getting lost in it is just getting lost. I mean, that's really the upshot of that, the result of that.
If the
So
purpose of anger is to bring to our attention something that feels like a violation, whether it's a personal violation or a violation of something going on in the collective, if that's the purpose of it, I feel like it's not the anger itself, holding on to that is not productive. It's what you do as a result of the anger. I think it was Buckminster Fuller that said, don't, I'm going to paraphrase this because I'm probably
yeah.
going to mess it up. But it was like, you know, don't try to fix a broken system, create a new one. Like, I'm just
Mm,
really, really paraphrasing that. Like, because it's redundant, like to stay in the anger, that's not productive. But the anger is almost like it's like an initiation to address something.
mm,
And it maybe if we can look at it like that as opposed to something to inhabit on a continual
mm.
basis.
Yeah, yeah, it's a spark, right?
Right.
It's our body, our mind, our consciousness communicating with us, but
Yeah.
it can't be the only fuel that we have, you know. It's not a sustainable way of living, working. And if we lose our own sense of joy and inspiration in life, then we're no good. You know, we just don't do anything worthwhile. And living in anger just kills inspiration, kills joy.
Feels
Got to work through
creativity.
it.
Yeah. I mean, you can't create from the space of anger. You have, inspiration is what helps us create. But I feel like anger can be like, okay, something needs to be done. But it's like you can travel there, but don't camp out. Like keep,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I love the idea of a fire, right? It starts the fire, and that fire can burn, but do we want to live in that sense of cortisol injection just running full time? No, it's
yeah,
defeating, self-defeating.
yeah.
But
It
let
really,
it light a fire, let it live with you, but not in a damaging way, not in a way that just keeps that needs suppression, right? That needs to be constricted or held.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love this. I love this conversation. I think it's so needed. There's just so much going on in our world today that there's a lot of really angry folks out there, understandably so. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, but to use it as a catalyst to bring about something better, I think is probably a good way to go.
Mm,
So
yeah.
yeah, good.
Mother Teresa could have been angry, you know.
Oh, I'm sure she had to have been.
She turned it into love, right? And that became how she moved forward, and that became how she served, and that's kind of the model that I would like to
Mhm.
find most productive for our lives.
Yeah, she tells there's a story about her, which I'm sure you've heard about how someone asked her to attend an anti-war protest. And she said, no. And they said, well, why not? You're all about peace. And she goes, well, when you have like a pro peace, you know, rally, I'll be there.
Yeah.
But she understood that resistance is like it's like swimming against the current. It's really not effective long term. I mean,
Mm,
sometimes you have to swim against the current for a minute or two, but you get exhausted, you know. And I feel like being angry all the time, that's what that is. It's just exhausting. Yeah.
hmm All right.
Yeah.
So breathe,
So
mindfully breathe.
yes, breathe. Thank you, Tim. That's something that you always draw my attention back to that I need to hear because I really do find myself walking around just forgetting to even get oxygen sometimes. And I'm like, little shallow
It's
breaths and
it's so amazingly effective for such a simple thing, but just
Yeah.
that constant monitoring of your breath, man. It's like it really helps. That's all I can say.
Yes. Yes. Well,
My
this,
wife likes it when I breathe. I'm just going to say that, right? It makes me into a
yeah.
much more
Go breathe, dear.
pleasant human to be around, you know?
That's right. Just go take some rest, please.
Right. If I forget to breathe, and we're going somewhere, she'll tell me to skip. All right. And it'll just like, and it's like the most ridiculous thing in the world. I'll start skipping and it makes me breathe and then my mood goes up. So,
That's awesome. Breathing and skipping. Sounds
yeah.
fabulous. Oh,
Yep.
this has been great. Thanks so much. I really look forward to these conversations.
Thank you. Me too. Hey, I have a little group forming on Facebook. I call it Untethered Wisdom, and I'm just kind of getting it going. I've got some things posted, and I'm going to post this there if that's fine with you, and
Sure.
I'll link to your podcast and a number of things. I've got some meditations going up there, so if anybody's looking for just a generic meditation or some reason to find half an hour to meditate, and I'll probably post some shorter ones there too. But it's Untethered Wisdom group on Facebook. You can just search it out. And I'll keep stocking stuff there with hopefully worthwhile information from my years of work and experience and living at the Temple of the Universe and all of that. So,
Well, I know it will be. I know it is to me. So, and I think everybody, you will really benefit from hanging out there on that page. There's a lot of wisdom and just really tools that are not difficult to implement in your life. And Tim is amazing. He brings that forth in a really wonderful way. So do check that out. And what I will do under this video, like I always do, is just have all of your relevant details so they can find you and get in touch. You have a lot of different services that you offer and meditations, and it's great. So,
well, thank you so much. I appreciate your support and happy to be able to spend time with you. It's a real blessing. Thank you.
me too. Thanks, Tim. You have a great day. And thanks, everybody, for listening. And join us next time on the Everything Considered podcast with April.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Bye. Take care.